Captain Hyojin pressed her palms against the cold metal railing of the command bridge. Through the massive viewport, she could see the dying glow of Kepler-7, once home to 3 billion Zephyrians. Now it was nothing more than a blackened husk, its surface scarred by the geometric patterns the Devourers left behind after consuming everything organic. "Status report on the evacuation fleets," she demanded, though her heart already knew the answer. Lieutenant Commander Tae-woo's fingers trembled as he worked his console. Sweat beaded on his blue-scaled forehead despite the bridge's cool temperature. "Admiral, the last transport from Kepler-7 went dark 40 minutes ago. We're tracking debris fields where the civilian ships should be." The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of life support systems. Every officer present had family on those transports. Hyojin watched a young ensign named Ye-jun quietly wipe tears from his eyes. His sister had been on the final evacuation ship. "The Devourers are moving faster than our projections indicated," reported Chief Science Officer Min-ho from his station. "Their replication rate has increased by 300% since they consumed the Kepler-7 industrial complexes. They're fusing our own manufacturing facilities against us." Hyojin moved to the tactical display, where a three-dimensional map showed the spread of the mechanical plague across Zephyrian space. Red dots marked consumed worlds, yellow showed planets under attack, and green indicated their few remaining safe systems. The green was disappearing rapidly. "How long do we have?" she asked quietly. So Min, her tactical officer, ran the calculations with grim efficiency. "Based on current expansion rates, the Devourers will reach Zephyr Prime in 18 days. Our remaining defense fleets won't slow them down by more than 6 hours." The command bridge shuddered as another explosion echoed through space. Through the viewport, they could see the twisted wreckage of the ZCS Harmony, a destroyer that had held the line for 3 hours against impossible odds. Its crew of 800 had bought precious time for civilian evacuations, but even heroes couldn't stop the inevitable. "Admiral," called out communications specialist Tae-woo, his voice cracking, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Kepler Defense Fleet." "Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge belonged to Admiral Kwan-ho, Hyojin's former mentor and closest friend. Static filled the transmission as Devourer jamming grew stronger. "Hyojin, if you're receiving this, we're finished here. The mechanical swarm broke through our final perimeter 20 minutes ago. My flagship is the last ship operational, and we're running on emergency power." The sound of explosions and tearing metal filled the background. "Listen carefully. The Devourers aren't just consuming our technology, they're learning from it. Every ship they destroy makes them smarter, faster, more efficient. You need to warn the other systems. Don't let them." The transmission cut to static. "Sir," Tae-woo whispered, "we're no longer detecting any Zephyrian life signs in the Kepler system. The defense fleet has been completely eliminated. 15 billion souls. Gone in less than 6 hours." Hyojin had seen war before, had commanded fleets in territorial disputes and border conflicts, but nothing had prepared her for this. The Devourers didn't just kill. They erased entire civilizations as if they had never existed. "Ma'am, we're receiving emergency broadcasts from 5 other systems," reported Ye-jun from the communications array. "The plague has reached Arcturus, Vega and Polaris simultaneously. They're requesting immediate military assistance." "With what fleet?" So-min asked bitterly. "We have 17 ships left in the entire collective. The Devourers have consumed everything else." Hyojin walked to the observation deck where she could see the full expanse of space around them. Distant stars that had once hosted thriving Zephyrian colonies now flickered with the wrong kind of light, the cold mechanical glow of Devourer activity. "We need to transmit a final message," she announced, returning to the bridge. "If we're going to die, at least we can warn the galaxy." "Admiral, with respect, no one will come," Min-ho said softly. "The Galactic Senate has strict non-interference policies. They'll classify us as another failed species and move on." "Maybe, but we have to try." She moved to the deep space communication array. "Tae-woo, prepare the quantum transmitter. Full power, maximum range, every frequency we can access." "Ma'am, that will completely drain our power cells. We'll be defenseless." "We're already defenseless. At least this way our deaths might save someone else." The massive transmitter array began to glow as it drew power from every system on the ship. Life support dimmed. artificial gravity fluctuated, and the lights flickered as energy was redirected to the communications equipment. Hyo Jin stood before the transmission console, knowing these might be the last words of her civilization. "This is Admiral Hyo Jin of the Zephyrian Collective to any civilization receiving this transmission. We are under attack by an ancient mechanical plague known as the Devourers. 7 of our 12 star systems have been consumed. 15 billion of our people are dead. Our fleets are destroyed, our worlds are dying, and we estimate 18 days before complete extinction." She paused, looking around at her bridge crew. Good people who deserved better than this ending. These machines replicate using organic matter and metal resources. They learn from every encounter, adapting their tactics and technology. If anyone can hear this message, please help us. We're transmitting our coordinates, tactical data, and everything we know about these creatures. Don't let what happened to us happen to you. If there's anyone out there who can stop this plague, please, we're running out of time. The message shot out across the galaxy at faster-than-light speeds, carrying with it the final hope of a dying species. On 1,000. World's communication officers noted the transmission, filed it in their databases, and returned to their daily routines. Another civilization had encountered something beyond their ability to handle. Another extinction was about to be recorded in the galactic archives, but on one small blue planet, in an unremarkable solar system, a young human named Ji-Ho was working, the night shift at the Seoul Deep Space Communication Center. He had been monitoring the quiet frequencies for 6 months, hoping to catch something interesting in the cosmic background noise. When the Zephyrian transmission reached Earth, Ji-Ho nearly fell from his chair. The translation software worked frantically to decode the alien language, and what appeared on his screen made his blood run cold. "Director Kim," he called out to his supervisor, "we're receiving something unusual. It's a distress call from somewhere. In the Kepler sector. They're saying their entire civilization is under attack." Director Kim hurried over, reading the translated message with growing alarm. This wasn't just a request for help. It was the death scream of an entire species, broadcast into the void with the desperate hope that someone, somewhere, might care enough to respond. What neither Ji-Ho nor Director Kim could know was that they had just received the message that would change the course of galactic history forever. Humanity was about to learn that they weren't alone in the universe, and that sometimes being alone was the safer option. President Yoon Seo hadn't slept in 36 hours. The translated Zephyrian message glowed on her screen, each word carrying the weight of billions of dying souls. Coffee cups littered the conference table where her emergency cabinet had been debating humanity's response since the distress call arrived. "Madam President," said Defense Minister Chang Min, rubbing his tired eyes, "we need to consider the risks. We don't know anything about these devourers. What if they follow our fleet back to Earth?" Foreign Minister Su Young leaned forward. "And what if we do nothing? 13 billion people are about to die, and we're the only ones who heard their cry for help." The room fell silent as President Yoon Seo stood and walked to the window overlooking Seoul. The city sparkled in the pre-dawn darkness, millions of people sleeping peacefully, unaware that humanity was about to make the biggest decision in its history. "I keep thinking about my daughter," she said quietly. "What kind of world are we leaving her? One where we turn our backs on genocide because it's safer, or one where we stand up and fight even when the odds are impossible?" General Kyung-ho, a man who had served in 3 wars and bore the scars to prove it, cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I've read the tactical reports. These machines have destroyed 7 star systems in weeks. That's firepower beyond anything we've ever faced." "But they've never faced humans before," interrupted Admiral Jinwoo. "Every war we've fought has taught us one thing. When someone needs help, we don't calculate the odds. We show up." The president turned back to face her advisors. "The decision is made. We're going to help them." Within minutes of the announcement, something unprecedented began happening across Earth. The Hyundai shipyards in Ulsan, which had been building civilian colony ships, suddenly buzzed with round-the-clock activity. Workers poured in from across the country, many leaving their families without knowing when they'd return. Foreman Park Dong-soo watched as massive colony vessels were stripped down to their hulls. "Rip out the hydroponics bays," he shouted to his team. "We're installing weapon systems where the gardens used to be." In the Samsung defense facility in Daegu, engineer Kim Ha-Nul stared at blueprints that had been theoretical just days before. "So you want me to build how many missiles in 3 weeks?" she asked her supervisor. "Whatever it takes," came the reply. "The president wants 200 ships combat ready, and we're not going to let her down." Across the galaxy, alien monitoring. Stations registered something they had never seen before. Earth's industrial output spiked by 400% overnight. Mining operations on Mars and the asteroid belt were redirected from civilian projects to military production. Every factory, every shipyard, every manufacturing facility was retooled for war. On the distant world of Nexus Prime, Galactic Senate, Representative Veltara watched the intelligence reports with growing alarm. Her species had evolved from prey animals, and every instinct screamed danger. "How is this possible?" she whispered to her aide, a nervous creature named Zektor. "Most civilizations take years to mobilize for interstellar conflict. Some take decades just to reach consensus." Zektor's tentacles trembled as he reviewed the data. "Ma'am, according to our analysts, humanity has a history of rapid military mobilization. During something they call World War II, they converted their entire civilian economy to military production in months." "But this is different," Veltara hissed. "They're preparing to fight an enemy they've never seen, to save people they've never met, in a part of space they've never visited. What kind of species does that?" The answer was becoming clear as more intelligence flowed in. Humans didn't just fight for survival or territory like most species. They fought for ideals, for strangers, for the abstract concept of what was right. Back on Earth, the transformation was visible from space. The orbital shipyards around Luna worked day and night, sparks flying as automated systems welded armor plating onto hastily converted vessels. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. Admiral Jinwoo stood in the command center of Busan Naval Base, watching the largest fleet in human history take shape. 200 ships of various sizes filled the harbor and orbital stations. None had been designed for combat, but human engineers had worked miracles in 3 weeks. "Sir," called Captain Yuna, approaching with a tablet full of crew assignments. "We have our final volunteer numbers. Every position is filled, with waiting lists for backup crews." Jinwoo smiled grimly. "How many career military?" "About 30%, sir. The rest are civilians who volunteered when they heard about the Zephyrian situation. We have miners from the asteroid belt, engineers from the Mars colonies, even teachers and students who insisted on joining the mission." "Teachers?" Jinwoo raised an eyebrow. Captain Yu Na nodded. "A history professor named Lee Min-ho said he wanted to help write a new chapter instead of just teaching old ones. His wife signed up too. She's a medical researcher." The Admiral walked among the ships, each one representing humanity's determination to answer a desperate call for help. The vessels looked strange: colony ships with hastily mounted weapons, cargo haulers converted into missile platforms, luxury liners retrofitted as troop transports. But they flew the same flag and carried the same hope. "Commander Sang-ho," Jinwoo called to his chief of operations. "Status on the experimental weapons?" Sang-ho grinned. "The scientists at KAIST have been working around the clock. They've developed something called adaptive ordnance. Missiles that can modify themselves based on target analysis. And our engineers have figured out how to weaponize our mining equipment." "Mining equipment?" "Think about it, sir. We use plasma cutters to slice through asteroids, magnetic accelerators to move massive cargo loads, and fusion charges to break apart planetoids. With some modifications, they make excellent weapons." As the fleet prepared for departure, communication officers across human space worked frantically to coordinate the logistics. Supply ships loaded with everything from ammunition to medical supplies, tanker vessels filled with fuel for the long journey across the galaxy. In a small apartment in Seoul, Ji-ho watched the news coverage with his family. His discovery of the Zephyrian distress call had triggered this massive response, and he felt the weight of responsibility. "Dad," his young daughter asked, "why are our spaceships going so far away?" Ji-ho knelt down to her level. "Because someone needs help and we're the only ones who heard them calling. But what if it's dangerous, and sometimes doing the right thing is dangerous? But that doesn't mean we don't do it. Across Earth, similar conversations were happening in millions of homes, families saying goodbye to loved ones who had volunteered for a mission with no guarantee of return. Yet there were no protests, no demands to reconsider. Humanity had heard a cry for help, and they were going to answer it. The night before departure, Admiral Jin Woo addressed his fleet commanders via hologram. 200 captains looked back at him, their faces showing determination mixed with the natural fear of the unknown. "Tomorrow we leave Earth for the first time as a united fleet," he began. "We're not going to conquer or colonize. We're going to save lives. The Zephyrians don't know we exist, don't know we're coming, and have no reason to expect help from anyone, but they're going to get it anyway, because that's who we are." Captain Yuna, commanding the lead destroyer Incheon, raised her hand. "Sir, what if we can't win? What if these devourers are too powerful?" Jinwoo's expression hardened. "Then we'll make them pay such a price for victory that they'll think twice before threatening anyone else. We didn't come this far as a species by backing down from impossible fights." The next morning, as the human fleet prepared to depart Earth's solar system, monitoring stations across the galaxy watched in fascination and fear. No species had ever mobilized so quickly or completely for the sake of strangers. The implications were staggering, but on Earth, the response felt perfectly natural. Humanity had always been at its best when facing impossible odds to help others. They had answered distress calls across their own planet for centuries. Now they were simply extending that tradition to the stars. As the fleet engines ignited and 200 ships began their journey across the galaxy, President Yoon Seo watched from her office window. Her daughter sat beside her, both of them looking up at the stars. "Will they make it back, Mum?" the little girl asked. President Yoon Seo hugged her daughter closer. "I don't know, but I know they'll try their best to save those people, no matter what it costs." The human fleet cut through space like a blade through silk, leaving ripples of fear across the galaxy in their wake. 200 ships moved in perfect formation, their engines burning with the steady determination that had carried humanity from caves to the stars. Commander Dal Ho sat in his intelligence vessel, the Soul Spear, monitoring communication frequencies. High across known space, for the past week something impossible had been happening. The galaxy was going quiet. "Sir," called his communications officer, Lieutenant Haiwan, "we've lost contact with another trade network. The crystalline merchants just stopped their regular broadcasts mid-sentence." Dalho frowned at his displays. The crystalline merchants had maintained constant chatter for over 3,000 years, their crystal-based biology requiring them to share information continuously to survive. For them to go silent meant something had scared them beyond their basic survival instincts. "What about the diplomatic corps?" he asked. "Nothing from them for 48 hours. Same with the Gossamer Collective, the Wanderer fleets, and even the mining guilds. It's like someone hit a mute button on half the galaxy." Dalho opened a secure channel to Admiral Jinwoo on the flagship. "Admiral, we're registering a galaxy-wide communication blackout. Every major power is going dark as we approach Zephyrian space." Jinwoo's weathered face appeared on the screen. "They're afraid of us." "Sir?" "Think about it, Commander. We received a distress call and mobilized 200 warships in 3 weeks. Most species take decades just to decide if they want to help. We've shown them something they've never seen before. On the distant world of Nexus Prime, Ambassador Kretal paced nervously in her private chambers. Her insectoid features twitched with anxiety as she reviewed the classified intelligence reports about humanity. The data painted a picture that kept her awake for days. "Show me the analysis again," she ordered her aide, a nervous creature named Felkor, whose tentacles couldn't stop trembling. "Ma'am, according to our xenoarchaeology teams, humanity has survived at least 6 extinction-level events on their homeworld. Ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic explosions, and global plagues. Each time they adapted and became stronger." Kretal's compound eyes focused on the historical data. "What about their military history?" Velkor's voice dropped to a whisper. "They fought wars that consumed entire continents. Something called World War II involved over 100 nations and lasted 6 years. The casualties numbered in the tens of millions, but they kept fighting until they achieved total victory. Total victory, Kretal repeated slowly. Most species fight until they reach acceptable losses or negotiate peace. Humans fight until the enemy surrenders completely. That's not the worst part, Mom. Velkor's tentacles writhed with fear. Our analysts call it the human doctrine. When they go to war, they don't just mobilize their military. They convert their entire civilization into a weapon. Every factory, every citizen, every resource gets focused on victory. Kretal turned to look out her window at the peaceful cityscape of Nexus Prime. And now they're heading toward an unknown enemy to save strangers they've never met. What kind of species does that? Meanwhile, aboard the human flagship Sejong the Great, Admiral Jinwoo walked through the corridors that hummed with constant activity. The ship had been a luxury liner just a month ago, designed to carry wealthy tourists to distant worlds. Now, it bristled with weapons and housed a crew of volunteers who worked in 12-hour shifts. "Admiral," called Chief Engineer Park Min-soo, "we've successfully converted Cargo Bay 7 into a missile factory. We're now producing 50 guided warheads per hour while maintaining jump speed." Jinwoo nodded approvingly. "What about the medical bays?" Dr. Kim Soo-jin has set up 3 field hospitals with enough supplies to treat combat casualties for 6 months. She's also trained half the crew in emergency medical procedures. This was what made humans different. Other species prepared for war by building weapons and training soldiers. Humans prepared by turning their entire society into an engine of victory. They didn't just fight wars, they manufactured them. Captain Yuna stood on the bridge of her destroyer, the Incheon, watching the tactical displays. Her ship had been a cargo hauler designed to transport mining equipment to asteroid fields. Now it carried enough firepower to level a small moon. "Ma'am," reported her weapons officer, Ensign Taemin, "the plasma mining cutters have been successfully converted to ship-to-ship weapons. We can slice through most known armor types." "What about the magnetic cargo loaders?" "They make excellent projectile weapons, ma'am. We can accelerate a shipping container to 20% of light speed." Yuna smiled grimly. Humans had always been good at repurposing tools. A mining laser became a weapon. A cargo loader became a cannon. A luxury cruise ship became a warship. It was practical thinking that had kept their species alive through countless disasters. On the reconnaissance vessel at the fleet's edge, Captain Sang-ho monitored the sensor readings as they approached Zephyrian space. What he saw made his blood run cold. "Communications, get me Admiral Jinwoo immediately," he ordered. "Admiral, we're detecting massive energy signatures ahead. The Devourers have begun their final assault on Zephyr Prime. Based on the sensor data, they're using the planet's own infrastructure against the Defenders." Jinwoo's calm voice came through the speakers. "Estimated time until planetary fall? 18 hours, sir, maybe less. Then we arrive just in time." Jinwoo opened fleet-wide communications. "All ships, this is Admiral Jinwoo. We've traveled 15,000 light-years to answer a distress call. Ahead of us, 13 billion people are fighting for their lives against an enemy that has consumed 7 star systems. We are outnumbered, outgunned, and fighting machines we've never encountered before." He paused, letting his words sink in across 200 ships. "But we are human. We've never met a fight we couldn't win, a problem we couldn't solve, or a people we wouldn't help. The Zephyrians sent out a cry for help, and we heard it. Today, we answer it." Across the fleet, crew members checked their weapons and equipment. Former teachers loaded missile tubes. Ex-miners calibrated plasma cutters. Retired engineers programmed targeting systems. They were ordinary people about to attempt something extraordinary. "Remember," Jinwoo continued, "we're not just fighting for the Zephyrians. We're proving that in this vast, cold galaxy, someone still cares. Someone still comes when you call for help. Today, that someone is us." Captain Sang-ho watched his sensors as the Devourer swarm came into visual range. The mechanical plague stretched across space like a cancer, their geometric forms blotting out the stars. Each machine was the size of a city block, covered in adaptive armor and bristling with weapons that had learned from every battle they'd fought. "Sir," whispered his tactical officer, "there are millions of them." Sang-ho keyed his microphone. Admiral, I'm seeing approximately 3 million Devourer units surrounding Zephyr Prime. They're using some kind of coordinated attack pattern I've never encountered. Understood, Captain. All ships prepare for combat insertion. We didn't travel across the galaxy to watch another world die. As the human fleet approached the battle zone, sensor operators across civilized space watched in fascination and terror. This was unprecedented. No species had ever voluntarily engaged an extinction-level threat to save strangers. The implications were staggering, but aboard the human ships, the approaching battle felt natural, almost inevitable. Humanity had always been at its best when the odds were impossible and the stakes were highest. They had answered distress calls across their own world for centuries. Now they were simply extending that tradition to the stars. The silence that had fallen across the galaxy wasn't just fear, it was anticipation. Every major power was about to discover what happened when humanity went to war for strangers. The answer would reshape galactic civilization forever. As the first Devourer scouts detected the human fleet, their mechanical minds processed something they had never encountered before, a species that manufactured victory from impossible odds, that turned disasters into triumphs, and that never, ever abandoned those who needed help. The Battle of Zephyr Prime was about to begin, and the galaxy held its breath to see if humanity's reputation for impossible victories was about to be tested against an enemy that had never known defeat. The first wave of Devourers hit the human fleet like a metallic tsunami. 3 million machines, each the size of a building, moved with perfect coordination toward the 200 human ships. Any sane military commander would have ordered an immediate retreat. Admiral Jin Wu ordered an attack. All ships execute. Formation Phoenix, he commanded from the bridge of the Sejong the Great. Remember, we're not here to survive. We're here to win. Captain Mi Young gripped her command chair aboard the destroyer Busan as the Devourers opened fire. Energy beams that could melt through titanium lit up space around them. Shields at 60% and falling. Her weapons officer shouted, "Hold position," Mi Young ordered. "Wait for Commander Dongwu's signal." Nearby, Commander Dongwu's converted cargo ship, the Seoul Express, was taking a beating. His vessel had been a simple freight hauler just weeks ago, designed to carry consumer goods between colonies. Now it charged straight into the heart of the Devourer formation like a missile. "Sir, hull temperature is critical," his engineer warned, as the ship's armor began to glow white-hot. "We need to pull back." "Negative," Dongwu replied calmly, watching his tactical display. "Trust the plan." The Devourers focused their fire on what they perceived as a suicidal attack run. Dozens of energy beams converged on the Seoul Express, turning its hull into molten metal. But Dongwu wasn't trying to survive the attack. He was using his ship as bait. "All crew to escape pods now," he ordered. "Computer, prepare for kinetic impact protocol." At the moment when his ship should have exploded, Dongwu triggered something the Devourers had never encountered before. Instead of detonating, the Seoul Express converted its fusion reactor into a massive kinetic accelerator. The ship became a bullet fired at 20% of light speed. The result was devastating. The improvised projectile tore through the Devourer formation like tissue paper, destroying hundreds of machines in seconds, but more importantly, it created a gap in their perfect coordination. "Now," Admiral Jin Wu commanded, "all ships target the disrupted formation." What followed defied every military textbook in known space. The human fleet didn't fight like any civilized species. They fought like apex predators. Captain Yuna's destroyer used its mining equipment as weapons, firing shipping containers filled with explosive cargo at machine formations. Each container was programmed to detonate at precisely the right moment, turning simple cargo into guided missiles. "Direct hit on the command cluster," her tactical officer reported. "Their coordination is breaking down." But the real innovation came from Captain Seo Jun's engineering team aboard the converted research vessel Newton's Pride. While the battle raged around them, they were attempting something that bordered on insanity. "Ma'am, we've successfully captured a damaged Devourer unit," reported Chief Engineer Park Jun-ho. "It's still partially functional." Seo Jun smiled grimly. "Then let's see how these things work. While other ships fought the machines, her team dissected one. Within 2 hours, they had cracked the Devourer's basic programming. Within 4 hours, they understood its replication protocols. Within 6 hours, they had done something that no species in galactic history had ever accomplished. They had reprogrammed the enemy. "Admiral, this is Captain Seo Jun," she reported to Jinwoo. "We've created what we're calling Hunter-Killer variants. They're programmed to seek out and destroy original Devourer units. How many can you produce?" "Sir, using their own replication technology against them, we can have 1,000 units operational within the hour." Across space, monitoring stations registered something unprecedented. The humans weren't just fighting the Devourers, they were turning the machine's greatest strength into their greatest weakness. Lieutenant Commander Hyun-soo led the most dangerous mission of the battle. Her boarding party had somehow managed to penetrate a Devourer command vessel, a massive machine the size of a city that controlled thousands of smaller units. "Move fast, stay low," she whispered to her team as they navigated corridors filled with spinning blades and energy conduits. The interior of the machine was like a nightmare: walls that moved, floors that could electrocute intruders, and defensive systems that adapted to every tactic. But Hyun-soo's team moved like they had been born for this kind of warfare. Former miners used plasma cutters to clear blocked passages. Ex-engineers disabled security systems with improvised electromagnetic pulses. Even the civilian volunteers fought with a precision that unnerved observers. "How are they adapting so quickly?" Admiral Hyojin whispered from her damaged Zephyrian command ship. She watched in amazement as the humans systematically dismantled machines that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. The answer lay in humanity's greatest strength, their ability to improvise under pressure. When their plasma weapons proved ineffective against Devourer armor, they converted mining lasers into ship-to-ship weapons. When conventional tactics failed, they turned their cargo ships into kinetic projectiles. When the enemy adapted to their strategies, they captured and reprogrammed the machines themselves. "Ma'am," reported Zephyrian observer Kang Ho, "the humans are using our own gas giant as a weapon. They're somehow manipulating its gravity well to crush entire Devourer formations." Hyojin stared at her tactical display in disbelief. The humans had positioned their ships around Zephyr Prime's largest moon and were using coordinated gravity generators to create artificial tidal forces. Devourer units that ventured too close were literally torn apart by gravitational stress. "This is impossible," she murmured. "They're treating fundamental forces of physics like tools." On hour 60 of the battle, the tide turned completely. Captain Seo Jun's hunter-killer units had successfully infiltrated the Devourer network. The reprogrammed machines spread through the enemy ranks like a virus, converting other units to their cause. "Admiral," Seo Jun reported, "we now have over 50,000 hunter-killers operational. They're using the Devourer's own replication facilities against them." Admiral Jin Woo allowed himself a small smile. "How long until complete system purge?" 12 hours, sir. Every Devourer unit in the system will either be destroyed or converted." The final phase of the battle was almost anticlimactic. The machines that had consumed 7 star systems found themselves being systematically hunted down by their own converted brethren. The plague that had terrorized the galaxy was being cured by humanity's greatest weapon, their refusal to accept that any problem was unsolvable. As the last Devourer signal went silent, monitoring stations across civilized space recorded something that had never happened before in galactic history. An extinction-level threat had been completely eliminated. Not contained, not driven off, but utterly destroyed. Admiral Jin Woo stood on his bridge, surveying the aftermath. Space was filled with the wreckage of 3 million Devourer units and the victorious glow of human ships that had done the impossible. "Communications. Open a channel to the Zephyrian survivors," he ordered. Admiral Hyojin's face appeared on the screen, her expression a mixture of gratitude and fear. "Admiral Jinwoo, on behalf of the Zephyrian Collective, we don't know how to thank you." "No thanks necessary," Jinwoo replied simply. "You called for help, we came." But as celebrations began aboard the human fleet, intelligence officers across the galaxy were reaching a terrifying conclusion. Humanity hadn't just won an impossible battle, they had demonstrated a level of military innovation and adaptability that redefined what was possible in warfare. The species that had answered a distress call from strangers had just proven they could eliminate any threat, solve any problem, and win any battle. The question now wasn't whether they were humanity's friends or enemies. The question was whether anyone in the galaxy was safe now that humanity had revealed what they were truly capable of when pushed to their limits. The Battle of Zephyr Prime had ended, but its implications were just beginning to reshape the balance of power across the stars. In 72 hours, humanity had gone from unknown species to the most feared military force in the galaxy. And they had done it all to save the lives of people they had never met. Ambassador Ji-Yon adjusted her formal diplomatic robes as she walked through the corridors of the Galactic Senate Station. The massive structure orbited a neutral star, its halls filled with representatives from over 1,000 worlds. But today those halls were unusually quiet. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Zephyr Prime, and the galaxy was still processing what it had witnessed. As she approached the main assembly chamber, Ji-Yon could feel the weight of 1,000 alien eyes upon her. Some watched with curiosity, others with respect, but most watched with barely concealed fear. The Senate chamber was a marvel of alien architecture, designed to accommodate species from gas giants to water worlds. Floating platforms held delegates whose bodies were made of crystalline structures. Environmental suits protected methane-breathing creatures from the oxygen-rich atmosphere. Tentacled beings communicated through bioluminescent displays while insectoid species clicked their mandibles in nervous patterns. "The chair recognizes Ambassador Ji-Yon of the Human Federation," announced the Senate Speaker, a being whose species had evolved from ancient trees and spoke in whispers that rustled like leaves. Ji-Yon stepped forward to the central podium, her voice carrying clearly through the universal translators. "Honored delegates, I come before you today to report on the successful completion of our mission to Zephyrian space." A ripple of movement went through the assembly. The Crystalline Collective's representative chimed nervously. The Aquatic Union's delegate retreated deeper into their water-filled chamber. Even the notoriously brave warrior clans of Vega shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "The Zephyrian Collective has been saved," Ji-Yon continued, her tone matter-of-fact. "The Devourers are extinct. Every single unit has been eliminated from known space. The threat that consumed 7-star systems in as many weeks no longer exists." Senator Kretal of the Nexus Coalition spoke up, her insectoid voice trembling. "Ambassador, our intelligence reports suggest your species used unprecedented methods to achieve this victory." "We used whatever methods were necessary," Ji-Yon replied simply. "When 13 billion lives are at stake, you don't limit yourself to conventional tactics. But you reprogrammed the enemy. You turned their own technology against them. You used entire planets as weapons." The accusation came from the Peaceful Assembly representative, whose species had evolved from herbivorous herd animals. Ji-Yon nodded. "Yes, we did. The Devourers had never encountered adaptive warfare before. They were programmed to learn from conventional military tactics, not from species that treat every obstacle as a puzzle to be solved." The Senate chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien languages. Some delegates demanded humanity be contained. Others argued for immediate defensive alliances against this new threat. A few whispered about the ancient prophecies of species that brought both salvation and destruction. "The human fleet is returning to your space immediately," Ji-Yon announced, cutting through the noise. "We have no interest in conquest or expansion into your territories. We came because someone needed help. The job is done, so we're going home." But her words did little to calm the assembly. The damage had been done. In 72 hours, humanity had demonstrated capabilities that redefined what was possible in warfare. They had shown that they could eliminate extinction-level threats, reprogram enemy technology, and coordinate impossible military operations across interstellar distances. On Zephyr Prime, the rebuilding continued under the watchful eye of Captain Do-Hyun and his small human garrison. The planet's cities were slowly rising from the ashes, their architecture now incorporating human defensive technologies that could adapt to any future threat. Admiral Hyo Jin found Do Hyun standing on the observation deck of the rebuilt orbital station, looking out at the stars where the great battle had taken place. The debris field had been cleared, but the memory of what happened here would echo through galactic history forever. "Your people are remarkable," she said quietly, joining him at the viewing port. "In 3 days, you accomplished what we thought was impossible," Do Hyun sighed, "and now the galaxy is afraid of us. Can you blame them? I watched your fleet turn cargo ships into kinetic weapons, reprogram enemy machines, and use gravitational forces as tools of war. Your species fights like the universe itself is just another machine to be repaired." "That's exactly how we see it," Do Hyun admitted. "Every problem has a solution. Every enemy has a weakness. Every impossible situation just needs the right approach." Hyojin studied the human captain's face. "But that's what terrifies them. Most species accept that some things are impossible. You treat impossibility as a temporary inconvenience." Reports from across the galaxy confirmed what both of them suspected. Trade routes were being quietly rerouted to avoid human space. The merchant guilds had established new policies requiring armed escorts when traveling near the Sol system. Defense contractors were working overtime to develop countermeasures against adaptive human tactics. On Earth, President Yoon Seo sat in her office reviewing intelligence reports that painted a clear picture. Humanity had saved 13 billion lives and eliminated a galaxy-wide threat, but the cost was their integration into galactic civilization. "Ma'am," General Kyung-ho entered with the final casualty reports. "We lost 12 ships and 3,000 personnel in the Zephyr Prime operation. The families have been notified, and memorial services are being planned. 3,000 lives to save." 13 billion, Yoon Seo murmured. "Any military commander would call that an acceptable exchange rate." "Yes, ma'am, but the political fallout is significant. Our diplomatic corps reports that 17 major powers have formed a containment council specifically to monitor human activities. They're treating us like a potential threat rather than an ally." Yoon Seo turned to look out her window at the Seoul skyline. Somewhere above, the stars held countless worlds full of intelligent life. Just months ago, humanity had dreamed of joining a galactic community, of learning from ancient civilizations and sharing in the wonders of the universe. Now those same civilizations watched them with the caution reserved for apex predators. "Have we received any new distress calls?" she asked. 17 in the past month, ma'am. Systems under attack by various threats, requesting immediate assistance." "And our response?" General Kyung-ho smiled grimly. "Admiral Jin Woo says the fleet is ready to deploy within 6 hours of receiving orders." That was the fundamental truth about humanity that the galaxy was struggling to understand. They hadn't fought the Devourers for glory or territory or resources. They had answered a cry for help from strangers, and they would do it again without hesitation. The Zephyrians understood this, which was why they had become humanity's first and most loyal alien allies. But they were also the only ones. Every other species maintained a careful distance, unsure whether humans were saviors or simply the next existential threat. In the depths of space, monitoring stations tracked the movements of human ships with the same attention once reserved for natural disasters. The species that had eliminated the Devourers could presumably eliminate anyone else who opposed them. The fact that they showed no interest in conquest only made them more unpredictable. Late at night, when the Seoul offices were quiet, President Yoon Seo often stood at her window, looking up at the stars. Each point of light represented worlds, full of life, civilizations with their own hopes and dreams and fears. And now many of those fears centered on humanity. They had proven that no cry for help would go unanswered, that no threat was too large to overcome, that no problem was truly unsolvable. But in doing so, they had revealed themselves as something the galaxy had never encountered before, a species that treated the impossible as merely difficult. The silence that had fallen across interstellar communication networks wasn't just fear. It was anticipation. Everyone was waiting to see what humanity would do next, whether they would use their newfound reputation to dominate or to protect. The answer lay in the same principles that had driven them to Zephyr Prime in the first place. When someone called for help, Humans answered. When someone needed protection, humans provided it. When someone faced impossible odds, humans showed up with impossible solutions. The galaxy might fear them now, but eventually another species would send out a desperate distress call. And when they did, humanity would respond with the same dedication they had shown the Zephyrians. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see whether humanity's greatest strength would become the galaxy's salvation or its greatest challenge. But one thing was certain: the universe would never be the same now that humanity had revealed what they were truly capable of when lives were on the line. In the end, their greatest victory had indeed become their greatest isolation. But it was an isolation born of respect rather than hatred, of awe rather than anger. The galaxy had learned that somewhere in the vast darkness of space there was a species that would cross impossible distances to answer a stranger's call for help. And that knowledge, terrifying as it might be, also carried a strange comfort. In a universe full of dangers and uncertainties, at least someone was listening for those who needed help. The end.